Man-eating tree can refer to any of various legendary or cryptid carnivorous plants that are large enough to kill and consume a person or other large animal. In actuality, the carnivorous plant with the largest known traps is probably Nepenthes rajah, which produces pitchers up to 38 centimeters tall with a volume of up to 3.5 liters. This species may rarely trap small mammals. The Madagascar tree, the earliest well-known report of a man-eating tree, originated as a literary fabrication written by Edmund Spenser for the New York World. Spenser's article first appeared in the daily edition of the New York World on April 26, 1874, and appeared again in the weekly edition of the newspaper 2 days later. In the article, a letter was published by a purported German explorer named Karl Liesch, who provided a report of encountering a sacrifice performed by the Mkodo tribe of Madagascar. This story was picked up by many other newspapers of the day, including the South Australian Register of October 27, 1874, where it gained even greater notoriety. Describing the tree, the account related, "The slender delicate palpi, with the fury of starved serpents, quivered a moment over her head, then as if instinct with demoniac intelligence fastened upon her in sudden coils round and round her neck and arms. Then while her awful screams and yet more awful laughter rose wildly to be instantly strangled down again into a gurgling moan, the tendrils one after another, like great green serpents, with brutal energy and infernal rapidity, rose, retracted themselves, and wrapped her about in fold after fold, ever tightening with cruel swiftness and savage tenacity of anacondas fastening upon their prey." The tree was given further publicity by Madagascar, Land of the Man-Eating Tree, a book by Chase Osborne, who had been a governor of Michigan. Osborne claimed that both the tribes and missionaries on Madagascar knew about the hideous tree, and also repeated the above Liesch account. In his 1955 book, Salamanders and Other Wonders, science author Willy Ley determined that the Mkodo tribe, Karl Liesch, and the Madagascar man-eating tree itself all appeared to be fabrications. The Nubian Tree, Phil Robinson, writing in Under the Punkah, related the tales of his uncle's travels throughout the world. He described a man-eating tree that was to be found in Nubia. In the tale, Robinson's uncle describes the tree. "This awful plant, that rears its splendid death shade in the central solitude of a Nubian fern forest, sickens by its unwholesome humours all vegetation from its immediate vicinity, and feeds upon the wild beasts that, in the terror of the chase, or the heat of noon, seek the thick shelter of its boughs. Upon the birds that, flitting across the open space, come within the charmed circle of its power, or innocently refresh themselves from the cups of its great waxen flowers. Upon even man himself when, an infrequent prey, the savage seeks its asylum in the storm, or turns from the harsh foot-wounding sword grass of the glade, to pluck the wondrous fruit that hang plumb down among the wondrous foliage. And such fruit. Glorious golden ovals, great honey drops, swelling by their own weight into pear-shaped translucencies. The foliage glistens with a strange dew, that all day long drips onto the ground below, nurturing a rank growth of grasses, which shoot up in places so high that their spikes of fierce blood-fed green show far up among the deep-tinted foliage of the terrible tree, and, like a jealous bodyguard, keep concealed the fearful secret of the charnel house within, and draw round the black roots of the murderous plant a decent screen of living green." The story continues in describing how the tree captured and ate one of the uncle's native companions, and how the uncle proceeded to shoot at the tree. When his ammunition was finally exhausted, the uncle continued his work using a knife to destroy the tree, as the tree fought back with its blood-sucking leaves, and entangling limbs. The Attribution, in J. W. Buell's Sea and Land, the Attribution plant is described as being native to Africa and Central America, and having stems that resemble many huge serpents in an angry discussion, occasionally darting from side to side as if striking at an imaginary foe, while attempting to consume humans. The Vampire Vine, William Thomas Stead, editor of Review of Reviews, published a brief article that discussed a story purportedly found in Lucifer magazine, describing a plant in Nicaragua called by the natives the devil snare. This plant had the capability to drain the blood of any living thing which comes within its death-dealing touch. According to the article, Mr. Dunstan, naturalist, who has recently returned from Central America, where he spent nearly 2 years in the study of the flora and the fauna of the country, relates the finding of a singular growth in one of the swamps which surround the Great Lakes of Nicaragua. He was engaged in hunting for botanical and entomological specimens, when he heard his dog cry out, as if in agony, from a distance, running to the spot whence the animal's cries came. Mr. Dunstan found him enveloped in a perfect network of what seemed to be a fine rope-like tissue of roots and fibers. The native servants who accompanied Mr. Dunstan manifested the greatest horror of the vine, which they call the devil's snare, and were full of stories of its death-dealing powers. He was able to discover very little about the nature of the plant, owing to the difficulty of handling it, for its grasp can only be torn away with the loss of skin and even of flesh. But, as near as Mr. Dunstan could ascertain, its power of suction is contained in a number of infinitesimal mouths or little suckers, which, ordinarily closed, open for the reception of food. If the substance is animal, the blood is drawn off and the carcass or refuse then dropped. An investigation of Stead's Review determined that there was no article published in Lucifer magazine about such a subject, and that the story in Review of Reviews appeared to be a fabrication by the editor. Literature. The Purple Terror by Frederick M. White is a man-eating tree, and the story was collected with the relevant section of Phil Robinson's book, The Man-Eating Tree, in Flora Curiosa, Cryptobotany, Mysterious Fungi, Sentient Trees, and Deadly Plants in Classic Science Fiction and Fantasy. This anthology also includes H. G. Wells' The Flowering of the Strange Orchid, about an orchid capable of consuming a human. In Francis Stevens' story The Nightmare, the flora on the mysterious island includes man-eating plants. In Piers Anthony's fantasy novels of Xanth, there are carnivorous tangle trees. The trees magically create easy, open paths leading to them. Their tentacles then catch animals that approach too closely. In the fantasy novel Beyond the Deep Woods, the first story in Paul Stewart and Chris Riedell's The Edge Chronicles series, the protagonist Twig encounters a man-eating tree called a bloodoak. A parasitic symbiotic plant, known as the tarry vine, snares victims and then drags them to the bloodoak where they are devoured. In the fantasy adventure novel Life of Pi, a shipwrecked boy lands on an island inhabited by meerkats and discovers that the trees on the island are carnivorous. In The Sagebrush Kid, a short story Annie Proulx find just the way it is, a childless Wyoming couple transfer their affections first to a piglet, then a chicken, and finally to a sagebrush they fancy has the appearance of a child. They tend and protect it, and even feed it bones and stray scraps of meat from their dinner table. Even after the couple's death, the shrub, now grown to the height of a fair-sized tree, is accustomed to human attention and meat. It consumes livestock, then soldiers, then a local medico, railroad men, surveyors, and most lately a botanist come to investigate its unusual height and luxuriance. In the dystopian novel Shades of Grey 1, The Road to High Saffron, the first book in Jasper Fforde's Shades of Grey series, there are carnivorous trees. In the Star Trek novel Planet of Judgment by Joe Hordman, the flora on a planet includes a carnivorous plant capable of engulfing and digesting an adult human. After a crewman is attacked, the rest of the away team tries to cut him out of the plant, but are too late. The description of the aftermath reads Hevelin's body looked like a botched autopsy. See also, carnivorous plant, cultural depictions, cryptobotany, Old Man Willow, Pure Chilensis, by Underpass Tree. References. Further reading, Michael, John. Rickard, Bob. The Rough Guide to Unexplained Phenomena. Rough Guides pages 319-321. ISBN 1843537087.